Good morning, Dr. Silberman. How's the knee?
Did you just have a brain fart?
I know Taekwondo.
Stop eating my sesame cake!
You're killing me, Smalls.
Fuck with me, and we'll see who shits on the sidewalk.
Come quietly, or there will be trouble.
Clearly, I wasn't talking to you, big titties. You cherub-looking motherfucker.
While you were still learning how to spell your name, I was being trained to conquer galaxies.
The real question is, what are those?
So, HBO's Watchmen TV series, we decided to go ahead and do a short chunk review of the first 4 episodes. We're recording on Sunday when the 5th episode is actually going to air, so it's quite interesting that we're doing it today. But this show is... I'm not exactly sure what Dee's position was. I know what my position was and Adrian's position was, I think, in the sense that, you know, I didn't really have any... When I first heard this was announced years ago, I had no interest.
Right.
Zero interest. And the same zero interest that I had for the prequel comic book series that they did with all these superstars. Right. I just had no interest at all. And I remember seeing the trailer maybe about 6 months or 8 months ago and thinking, okay, I kind of hate to admit it, but it's got me a little interested. And then after seeing the trailer and seeing a second trailer, I was like, okay, I may have to give this a whirl. And Adrian, I imagine you were in the same boat?
Yeah, I was. And, you know, the thing is, too, is, you know... It's one of those things, like, when you're talking about Watchmen, I mean, obviously you're talking about the legacy of the original comic book series, and then most people know it as a paperback or collection, a graphic novel. You know what I'm saying?
That always chaps my yap when people say, the graphic novel. No, it was a comic series.
No, it's a comic book.
It was a comic book series over the course of 12 issues. Go ahead.
Exactly.
But you got to admit though, man. Just not to piggyback off that. You got to admit though, man. If any comic book in a 12-book series format or 12-book issue format is ever fitted the befitting of the title graphic novel, it's been this one.
Yeah, certainly.
Because it's so dense. It reads like a novel. Thanks to Alan Moore. You know, he's a prolific writer, dude. He has no shame in his game as far as writing goes. So I would say it's definitely if anything could be called a graphic novel, even though it was collected as, you know, into a big squareback. It's still kind of
I disagree, but go ahead. That would be a digression. Go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, just to, kind of continue as a segue off what Dee was saying, you know, part of my apprehension, too, was just the fact of how they shoddily treated, you know, Alan Moore, you know, in terms of, you know, just really taking, you know, this thing that he and Dave Gibbons created, you know, and just like, after so many years, was like, this needs to be branched off into this and that and this and that, and then this terrible ass movie, and then this. And it's just like, no, you didn't need to do all that. So when I heard that there was going to be an HBO series, it was something that I believe Dee and actually you too, Swizz, y'all had said, you know, Watchmen, if they were to do it, because we were talking about the movie at the time, like this would be better suited for like an HBO series. Like I remember that clearly. You guys saying that on the episode. You know what I'm saying? So that was very prescient, you know, of you guys. And lo and behold, they finally come out with one. And I didn't really want to watch it at first for a couple of reasons. Just all the aforementioned. And then when I saw in the very first episode that they were going to be dealing with the Tulsa massacre of 1921, the destruction of Black Wall Street. Now, that's a very, very, I won't say touchy subject because it's American history. It's not just Black American history. It's American history, period, whether people like it or not. So when you're dealing with something like that, you can't have kid gloves. You can't gloss over it. You can't do none of these things to, you know, take the edge off of what happened. You know, so I was already arms folded, like, this better not be some bullshit. I know that. So I went into it with those apprehensions, and, you know, to my surprise, the series really has become sort of like, it's so off kilter, but yet it takes all these things from history itself and then the current culture, and just kind of blends them into something that's really very much unlike Watchmen.
Right.
It could actually be titled something else. It just has these tangential elements to it that make you remember, oh yeah, that was in the original comic. Oh, that's that character, that's that reference. But really, if you take all that out, it exists really almost by itself in a way.
Well, you know, I would kind of disagree, only because I think that, and just before we get too far into it, the series is produced and created by Damon Lindelof, you know, of Leftovers and Lost fame. And I listened to an interview, a podcast interview that Dee recommended that Lindelof was on. It's actually the official HBO Watchmen podcast. You know, and he talked a lot about his apprehensions, you know, doing this and, you know, and it being his next project and whether he thought he could pull it off, you know, with his collaborators, etc. And a lot of the things that he said on the podcast left me feeling like, you know, his heart and his head were in the right place in terms of what it is he wanted to accomplish by attempting to do this. But, you know, the series stars Regina King, Jeremy Irons, Gene Smart, Tim Blake Nelson, Yahya Abdul Mateen, I think is the guy who plays Regina King's husband. We've got Don Johnson on the show, and it's a large ensemble cast. But it is a continuation of the Watchmen story brought forward 30 years from the 80s in a semi-present world like what exists today. I mean, some of the science is, you know, like we don't see references to like the internet or smartphones really, but you know, but they do have like gadgets and there's technology, etc., and a lot of the social things in terms of racism and white supremacy, which the show is a big theme in the show, are still present.
Right.
But I think to me, like some of the zaniness of the Watchmen universe, the craziness, I think that's what they bring forward into this new series. So it's not so much about, because I like the fact that it's not, oh, what happened to the owl? What happened to, you know, this person and that person? And I don't need to know all that. What happened after the squid? I don't need to know all the details. The fact that they're showing that, you know, what happened afterward in terms of these are the characters that were birthed from that. It's like the new guard, so to speak. The new generation that was birthed from that period. And so, and again, the craziness of the Watchmen universe, the oddballness, which I kind of actually attribute to maybe more of a British sensibility from Gibbons and Moore. I think that's what they bring to it. So I like the fact that it's maybe 20% what we remember from the comics. And for anybody who doesn't know, this current HBO series is a continuation of the comic books, not the film that was directed by Zack Snyder. That was an adaptation of the comics. It's its own thing being, you know, propelled forward, and tackling modern issues. But anyway, I like the fact that it's not quite that, but at the same time, you know, I remember reading Watchmen and thinking, this is kind of weird. This is kind of odd. But, you know, all of Moore's stuff, you know, Marvel Man and V for Vendetta, it always had kind of an off-brandness to it that was kind of all his own. But what do you think, D?
Man, I love it. Pure and simple. It's better than what I thought it would be. It's not at all what I was expecting because I'm with you. I'm a bit of a purist. I like Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons, you know, tome. I like the separate issues. I like the overall overarching element behind the clock ticking down to a certain kind of doomsday type of perspective. I even like the octopus blowing up in New York. At the end of it, that worked. All that worked for me. A space alien creature like an octopus.
I think it's a squid, actually.
Not going to squid. Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, well, it was a squid. I did not think this is going to be good, based on the fact that what people seem to always be doing to be very, very referential to the stigma that was created by Alan Moore. As much as he created a brand new genre, or kind of riff on an old genre, made it new again, it very much became a thing where people were always trying to replicate what he did. And Damon Lindelof and his staff and his crew and his writers have said, no, we're not doing that. We're going to take the essence of what it is that he created and turn it into a new thing based on today's sensibilities. This is Trump's America. This is very much reflected in that. This is a place where Dr. Manhattan, who's going to play a very big part in this. I'm telling you, dude. I'm theory crafting right now, but I have a whole idea of what's going on
give us your prognostication toward the end of the episode, and let's see, 4 episodes from now if it comes to fruition.
Okay, I'll just say this. Adrian Veidt is not on our planet. I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
Yeah, and if he is on our planet, he's in a different time period because of what John Osterman, Dr. Manhattan can do, has essentially removed him from a place where he can have access to a technology without having to create anything where he can create more havoc on the world. I'll leave it at that.
All right.
So think about that.
Okay. All right.
So, yeah. So we'll see where it goes. But the reason I say that, man, because look at where he's gone so far. Look at what he's doing. Look at the two different. Look at how there's no electricity there. Where he is, unless he's created it himself from scratch, because he's that kind of dude. He has no. I mean, the sportsman has a gun. He doesn't.
Yeah.
Right.
He lives in a place where there's no central air. He's very much like living by gaslight. And everything he does is like 17th
it's
century
very steampunk
living.
Yeah.
In a way. Very steampunkish. But no electricity. So it's just all gas and heat and varying things he has at his disposal, but he's still managing to craft strange things out of.
Very strange things.
Even like babies and things of that nature, dude. But he says, well, I'm not your creator.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, okay, so how does he know to get these things if he's not the creator of these things? And are they golems? Are they real things? Or what imbues these things? What makes them alive if he's not the creator? So there's a bunch of interesting things like that, man, are going down though. The idea of this crazy squid fall that happens every so often, and it's like a common thing for people now to realize to stop driving their cars and let the squids fall down for a certain period of time, and then turn on the windshield wipers, wipe off like it's so much rain.
It's so funny, and I've heard so many people say this who are watching this show. Mm-hmm. Like I was talking to my wife, it is nearly impossible to explain to her what's going on.
You can't.
I mean, I'm just like,
you can't.
Well, see, what happened was Dr. Manhattan dropped this big alien squid. I mean, Adrian Veidt, who's Ozymandias, he dropped this big alien squid on New York and killed like 2 million people. And it stopped the Cold War, and that's why they have squid rainfall 30 years later. What?
Right.
And then telling her, like all these superhero characters, they're just masked adventurers and vigilantes.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Manhattan is the only person in the Watchmen universe that I'm aware of that actually has superpowers.
I believe you're correct. Yes. Yes.
He's the only superpowered being. So, so let's talk about the cast and some of these performances. Since Dee was talking about Jeremy Irons, who's playing Adrian Veidt, aka Ozymandias. What do you guys think of the cast and the actors and the writing, the words that are coming out of their mouths, their performances? They are really doing incredible work, the producers of the show and the actors, because they're saying a lot by a lot and not telling you a lot. There's hardly any exposition. There's no, well, what's going on here is as a way to explain to the audience or whatever. And there's just so much, subtext, and there's just so much that's not being said. What do you guys think of the cast from Regina King, Irons, and Don Johnson on down to Henry Louis Gates, Skip Gates.
Yes, Henry Louis Gates Jr.
Yes, exactly. And Hung Chau, and the guy who plays the FBI agent who's paired up with Gene Smart. What are y'all's thoughts?
First off, just off top, man, every episode, I'm living for them segues to Adrian Veidt.
Right.
Like, when it segues to Adrian, it's like, oh, man, what Machiavellian machinations is he going to come up with now in this episode? Like, oh, my goodness. And Irons is he already has that, he's always had that aristocratic air.
Yeah.
That presence to him. Yeah, perfect, exactly. Perfect description. And the way he brings it to the fore in this is just, it's magnificent. You're just like, oh my goodness, it's so crazy. And to think that really it's just the three of them. It's him and a pair of the clones that he makes that are his man and woman servants.
Right.
You know
Ms.
what I'm saying?
Crookshanks
And it's just them.
Mr. Phillips. Isn't that their names?
Yes, Mr.
Phillips.
Yes, Mr. Phillips. And Miss Crookshanks.
Mr. Phillips is like my man Tom Missing from Sleeping
Oh,
Hollow.
really?
Okay.
Oh, and by the way, my understanding is they're not clones.
Huh?
Lindelof says
What?
he says they're not clones. He says you can call them that, but they're not really clones.
Okay, don't spoil nothing,
Okay.
man. Okay, don't spoil no further.
Okay.
All right, cool. I'll take that keep that in mind.
I mean, but you listen to the same podcast I listen to, right, Swain? There was an encapsulation of 1 through 3?
Correct.
Episodes 1 through 3? Okay. Yeah, I mean, you're right. He did say that, but I mean, you're not missing anything there, Andrew. Because if you saw the last episode, you're like, okay, why is he getting these things out of the river? He's fishing these things out of the river.
Oh, man.
So it's like, what's going on with that? But I mean, it's strange, man.
Bruh.
It's so strange.
And before I go any further, let me, man, that whole scene right there where he's fishing him out the river.
Get back in there. You ain't done yet.
He's tossing them back like they're defective fish or something.
Like fish.
Like it's a bad apple.
Right?
You'll do. And then he takes him to this incubator, this sinister incubator, and puts them in
Spins
like
them around,
hen's
and then they
eggs,
become
and
full
spins
grown,
them around,
yo.
and he turns up the music enough, but you can still hear the plaintive cries of these children. Oh my God, I was like, it was maddening, but I loved it. I was like, oh my goodness. Oh,
and my understanding
so
too
terrible.
is for Jeremy Irons' character, if I'm not mistaken, like they didn't have him for a long time, so I think Lindelof said they shot his stuff first, all his scenes first before the first episode was even finished.
Wow.
So I think it had to do with they wanted to shoot. They're in like Wales or somewhere, and if they didn't shoot it at a particular time of year, it'd be too cold and be too hot.
Oh, they'd lose the...
So they said we got to shoot all of this within this period and this period. So they got Irons and they just did it all. So, literally, I mean, they could shoot the 5th episode, then part of the 4th episode, then part of the 1st episode.
Sure.
He could jump all around. He doesn't have really any emotional sense of what's going on with his character as it relates to the bigger story. He has no sense of that. He's just going in and, like fucking it up and doing his thing. You know what I mean? But you know what I'm saying?
Man.
He has no sense of any kind of chronology or anything.
And that's probably best too, because you can sense it like with Adrian Veidt, wherever he is, you know what I'm saying, whatever this situation is, it's so self-contained that it almost functions like the way the Black Freighter functioned in the original Watchmen story. Right. It's its own little story that you could almost take to the side and say, what's going on with this? This is an interesting subplot. There's probably some subtext to the larger story, but this can be taken on its own. You know what I'm saying?
To your point, Adrian, if you look at some of the visuals on the show, when as Adrian Veight's like riding his horse towards where the buffalo are, there's a black freighter, there's a pirate.
I saw that.
Black freighter scythe It's like, wow, that's kind of cool. That's kind of cool. I wonder how that plays
yeah.
into it, you know? So maybe it is a sub story, you know?
I was going to say, just moving along with the casting, you know, Regina King as Sister Knight, a.k.a. Angela Abar. That was a perfect choice for the lead. Yeah. Perfect choice for the lead, man. I mean, there were certain points in the episodes where just her face, like I'm thinking, particularly in that second episode where they reveal what happened on White Night.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Where she's just laying there in the bed, no makeup on, just, she was at once so compelling, but also so real. Right. You know what I'm saying? Like, you really get the sense of, man, she's really going through this, you know, and recounting this thing to, you know, the chief. You know what I mean? And one thing about that whole White Night sequence, as well done as it was, what the hell happened to her husband? When she said there's somebody in the house, it's like he got ghosts in his head. And she's handling business. Now, if somebody break in my house, I mean, as a husband and a father myself, I'm fighting them too. I'm not going to be out.
Well, but see, that's the thing. I think Mateen, who plays her husband, Calvin, I think his role within that relationship is the role that in previous, you know, in a previous era would have been the wife. Where when the shit goes down, he understands, let her do her thing. She's a cop and she's trained. I get the kid. Well, I guess they didn't really have kids at that time. Because her partner gets killed. And that's it. So maybe he was just like, okay, I'm gonna let you handle this. I'm gonna just get out the way. I'm trying to stay out the shootout.
You do what you do best.
That was hilarious.
Because I didn't notice that too, but I immediately thought, well, he went to go get the kids. But now I'm thinking about it as I say it out loud. They didn't have kids until after her partner was killed.
And you know, it kind of would have lessened her a little bit if, okay, she took care of the first shooter that came in, and then like he come in with a second shotgun, just like, hey, I got the other one, babe. You know what I'm saying? It kind of would have been like, yeah, it would have lessened her as a badass. I get it.
And clearly she is supposed to be the badass. It'd be like, you know, any of the action stars of the 80s and their spouse all of a sudden, you know, she's a kick-ass as opposed to, you know, the way that they were always portrayed. But, yeah.
Right, exactly.
But, you know, and I think, I was going to ask you guys who you thought was the MVP as far as the cast is concerned. I give MVP to Jean Smart. I give him.
She did kind of just come up in there and just like bogart the shit.
That third episode with a phone call from an intergalactic phone booth on some Doctor Who shit.
I mean, given that was an episode, it was mostly about her and kind of build her character, allowed you to see who she was, who she became, and the fact that she was a descendant of the comedian and the Silk Spectre. But, you know, I think, I mean, for me, I mean, I still think it still goes to the aforementioned Angela Abar, dude. Wherein, to me, I think it's her story primarily. That's why she's on the poster, and that's why, you know, it's basically her story.
But I'm not
right
saying
now,
it's not her story. I'm saying MVP of the actors.
Right.
I think Jean Smart is doing way more. Yeah. They're giving her way more to do. She has way more subtlety to what she has to convey. She has to be many more things at the same time. She has to be the child of rape, the child of a superhero, a former superhero, a 50-something-year-old woman, a single 50-something, childless 50-something-year-old woman, working in a man's world, and she has to investigate what is essentially her old life. And by doing that, you know, she's constantly unearthing things about herself that she doesn't want to confront. So she has a lot more to do than I think almost any other character, and she's doing it very subtly. Like some of that's the snarkiness of her replies, like, you know, hey, I've seen it all, I've done it all. And her trying to tell Angela Abar in the car ride, yeah, you're wearing a mask because you're trying to hide the pain. No, I'm
Yes.
trying to protect myself.
Right.
Yeah, from the pain.
Yes, that was a
I was
great
like,
exchange.
God
Yeah.
damn.
It really was. It was. She killed it.
You know.
I would say, and the other thing you left out too, Swizz, is that in a way that she is also the ex-spouse of a god. In
Right.
A way.
Yeah.
Whom
know,
she
in a strange
whom she
way.
hasn't
That's what
gotten
football
over,
conversations about.
you know, in
Yeah.
many ways.
Right.
Hence the
Right.
blue Mr.
Right.
Dr. Manhattan dildo.
Yeah, yo, I was
Yeah.
like, whoa.
Yeah,
You know, the silver
You
sword.
had all
you know.
that, Papa?
Yeah.
Excalibur.
Crazy. Yeah. The blue
Yeah, yo.
meaning. Man.
Not the blue meanie.
But yeah, yo. I mean, I agree with you saying, man. I as far as the overall story arc, and it's good because she is that glue, right? She's a glue between the past and the future. You know, it works. Like, she's a character between her and Dwight. They're the two that have the most solid grounding in the past and the future as far as the Watchmen goes, as we know them. You know, so I would say this: she's complex to a point to where I think we're going to see some very interesting things develop. Man, I'm prognosticating, but there's some underlying things that are going on there that they don't pick up on as storytelling points. I'd be very disappointed. You know, she has all the chops of her father and mother put together. What do you guys think about True?
Okay, so that would almost be the second most interesting. Like, for instance, for me, Sister Night is an interesting character that I don't know much about.
Yeah.
The lube guy. You know, as a new character, I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. The fact that that Sister Night is actually a part of the police force, but she's still kind of like her own kind of vigilante in a way. Like, you know, we see her kind of breaking the rules, you know, to breaking into the, the center for whatever, you know, to kind of follow her family tree, you know, so she could figure out as far as her father and her grandfather and her mom and, you know, and all this kind of stuff. The guy, the Red Scare, you know, like, you know, they're the only ones who wear masks, like almost like they're adventurers, you know, in the police force. And then Glass, you know, Tim Blake Nelson's character.
Yeah.
Who Tim Blake Nelson is fucking some shit up as that character, yo.
He's
living in
it,
this
man.
bomb
He's killing
shelter
it,
and all creepy and weird and and that whole kind of a Rorschach-ian exchange where he was eating with the mask pulled up. It's like, wow.
Right.
But Lady True to me is the most interesting character that they've introduced of the new ones so far, because the way they introduced her in that 4th episode in those first 10 minutes was absolutely novel. I mean, if anything was like original, it was like, oh my God. You know, and I did some research. Lady True is actually, I think, like a 5th century warrior in Vietnamese culture. There was an actual Lady True. And I guess that's where she takes her name. But she's just interesting and just fascinating to me. The whole thing there, she's kind of like this era's Adrian Veidt to an extent. You know, Adrian Veidt was smart, technologically advanced, would have these genetically mutated pets. You know, a hybrid of a zebra and a gazelle and a tiger all at the same time. And, you know, all this kind of stuff. She's kind of like him in a way.
I gotta tell you, man. There's more to it than that, man. There's more to it. I submit to you, and this is more Dwight's. This is another one of Dwight's like crazy, you know, prognostications.
Yeah.
The way they're building her character, not only did she take over Veight's company by buying it, she's also taking up some of Veight's like esteem and the way he develops his science. Like, I would tell you this, I'll say this, that her daughter is her clone. It's not her daughter.
I would kind of ride with that. Yeah, because some seems off. She got an IV in, and
she, you know what I'm saying? Her daughter is a clone. She says, I felt the pain, Mother, in my feet. Mother's like, yeah, that's good. You're gonna take me back to the bedroom? No, I'm not taking you back to the bedroom. You know, walk back to the same way you walked up here. You know, That's because you don't say that. You don't treat your child
that's
like
some
that.
cold shit to say to your child. Damn.
There's a way that she's training her to be based on what she knows that she's going to become and what she expects from her. I'm telling you, man,
my only
this is really
disagreement
strange
with that
stuff
is it would be easy for it to be all clones. Like that would be that would be easy, and that would almost be like a fake away that we've seen comics do and other things do. Oh, it wasn't really Steve Rogers; it was a clone. It wasn't really Spider-Man. It wasn't really Peter Parker. It was a clone. It wasn't really, he was a Skrull. You know what I'm saying? To me, it's just that's kind of an easy go-to as opposed to. I mean, she is a geneticist, I guess, right? Because she brought that baby to the couple in the very beginning, and that whole sequence with the couple and the eggs. And the recurring of eggs in the show from, Angela, making the smiley face with eggs. And the fact that she drops the eggs and he saves the one, and then she shows up with this baby and talks them out of, giving up their house and their property.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I tell you, man, she gave me chills. She broke down the legacy. She's like, no. See. Your business is not your legacy. Your children are your legacy.
It's like,
and if you don't, and it's like, wow. It's like if you don't have that, your legacy ends right here.
Terminated.
You go extinct.
Damn. That's some cold business world shit. Damn. Take it or leave it type shit. Dang.
What do you guys think landed on the property that she was really trying to get from them before it landed? Because she predicted it out to the moment it was going to come. So she set it up like that. That clock she has.
Yeah, there's way more to it.
Man, than what we know.
I don't know what that was. At first, I thought maybe it was Dr. Manhattan coming back to Earth. I was like,
he has risen.
Right. He will come from the clouds with his blue dick.
Oh man.
But I don't know, man. I really don't. But again, just the fact that they're not explaining everything, and like Adrian was saying before we started recording, with the lube guy. Even if they don't tell us who Lube Guy was, why he was spying on Sister Night, why he ran and slid into the sewer. If they never bring it back up, if they never address it again, I don't care. I'm fine with that. You've sold me on this world and all of its crazy bonkers. Because that's the thing about this particular show. So it's one part like a family drama of a cop and her family. It's one part some madman in some alternate reality, in some steampunk reality, and then it's another part like almost like an FBI procedural with a supernatural bend to it, and then it's like some futuristic dystopian thing as well. It's like a lot of different things all happening at the same time. So the fact that they're able to keep all those plates spinning and have it look symmetrical is crazy.
And the kind of I won't say it's the glue, but what kind of holds that framework together is kind of like that soundtrack by Trent Reznor.
Yeah. So I was going to bring that up. Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, the only two original members of Nine Inch Nails, do the music for it, and it is fucking there. Adrian was saying that's what adds to the off kilterness of it when you hear the boom.
Yes. And then that whatever that synthy, just like that weird synth, and it's just like what, like it reminds me of like that Clockwork Orange Kubrick, that period where in Clockwork Orange is so off kilter. Like, what kind of mad world is this? But it has the cold detachment of Kubrick plus a David Fincher.
Yeah.
Like, it's so detached and cold, like it's searching for a soul or something.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? But it works.
The first time we see Sister Night, or see Angela's transformation of Sister Night, and that walk she has, and the syncopation of that soundtrack with her walk, I was like,
yeah.
I'm a superhero.
I'm sold. I don't know what kind of person she is, what kind of character she's supposed to be, whatever it is she is.
Yeah.
That alone was like, okay, this she's about business. She's about kicking some ass and taking some names. This is what Sister Night does. I was like, wow, this is cool. And like I said, I didn't want to like the idea of everybody being in masks. I thought the idea of masks, especially from how they were portrayed in the movie The Watchmen, you could see the slide they're going towards in terms of it being like vigilantes is not being an accepted or wanted profession or even a need by the constabulary, by the police that were there. You know what I mean? They looked down on those guys because they were lawless, didn't have a code that was consistent with what they needed to keep the peace in social structures, right? So I felt, okay, I knew this was going to be a bad thing, but to find out the police did it to protect themselves, like if we go back to the very first episode, right? And the police officer's getting out of his car, pulling this Rorschach guy over.
He's one of the 7th Cavalry.
Rorschach guy over.
Yes.
From the 7th Cavalry, thank you. Was a Rorschach mask. He gets out and he pulls this guy over and stops him for a search and seizure, whatever he wanted to do inside it. And the fact he had to wear a mask to protect himself in this world because the bad guys have gotten so horrendous and so savage, where they will track you down based on your own personality and see who you are and be able to hurt you and your family. Which I thought was a very real take, a very real thing. I mean, that's why your Red Dog Squad, that's why your SWAT members, that's why certain members of the FBI and they wear masks to protect themselves from that kind of potential problems. So I was like, this is a very real thing for me. And then to find out that their gun control for the police officers was so heavily induced to where you have to get a special pass
from your desk sergeant or whomever,
police station. For your desk sergeant, exactly, to open up to release a lock on it. I was like, wow, this is brilliant and sad at the same time, but also like Adrian would say, like almost prescient, like it should be that way. Like if you
like you can see how the logic of how they could get to, okay, this would be the future.
Got to that
we would be in, where it's like, okay, you can't just pull your gun and shoot a guy in the back, 5 times in South Carolina. No. You have to get authorization to unlock your gun. And that one cop, he paid for it, by, having to debate, as to whether he could get his gun unlocked.
Well, yeah, as to the, not to pump up or push any kind of potential buttons or any kind of, but it's the NRA, the bad guys know where to get the guns, man. The bad guys don't have to go to change the command to get the guns. The guns are there anyway to be had. So you don't need a law's not going to affect everybody because everybody's not following the law. So these guys had guns because they had access to them because they didn't necessarily get them from the usual standpoints that people that were law-abiding citizens would have to go through to get the guns. So that's to me that was a political statement in and of itself. That whole segment was a political statement of itself of how things can devolve in a society to the point to where arguably we are now, but then could be very well be in the future from a dystopian perspective.
And and the other thing too that was interesting is kind of the juxtaposition, in terms of race, in the show. You know what I mean? Like how things are kind of flip flop, like where people. Some people using, apparently Robert Redford became president, an actor president in this reality, much like a Ronald Reagan, you know what I'm saying? And so apparently he approved, what's the term? Redfordations. But what's the real term I'm looking for? Thank you. Yeah. Right. He approved reparations, for, the blacks of, the Tulsa massacre, and how people like the 7th Cavalry and people who don't agree with those call them Redfordations, you know what I'm saying, as a side swipe to that, and how, a lot of the poor whites, they live in Nixonville, named because of President Nixon, former President Nixon, and kind of how they're juxtaposed, like they're kind of like the dregs of society, whereas before, minorities would have been.
The cops would pull up in Nixonville and banging all of these kind of poor whites or whatever and rousting them up the same way they would pull up in the hood and push everybody up against the wall and up against the car and start asking questions and violating people's, civil rights and their privacy. To get what they want, and you see that reversal, and it's like, oh, wow,
it's like,
God damn,
And you know what, man? I gotta be honest, man. Honestly, I mean, it's not easy for me to see it there either. I mean, I do see the quote unquote poetic justice of the situation, but to see them like mistreated and taken out of their homes, not knowing if they're actually part of the situation anyway, it's just as bad as it would be to any other.
And I think that's the goal of the storytellers, is to show that you know, no matter what, it's incorrect, and it's not a right thing to do, no matter who's on the receiving end of it. And it goes back to the whole, well, who's watching the Watchmen? You know, the people who are supposed to, you know, protect and serve are, you know, treating us like, you know, we work for them instead of them working for us. In many ways. But I love that whole mask. You know, the cops wearing the masks. I think it's interesting. The Watchmen yellow, you know, is very distinct,
very striking,
and it's a good callback that kind of recurs. I love that. I love that whole phone booth thing with Gene Smart.
Yeah.
You know, this weird intergalactic phone call to Mars.
That was incredible. That was incredible, man. She was telling the entire story in there.
And even the idea that she starts laughing when that car lands in the middle of the area, because it's her story. You know, this thing that goes up and comes back down, it's the story that she was telling Dr. Manhattan in a weird way. And that's why she laughs.
That's true. Yeah,
That's why she's like, what the? You know, she's laughing.
The brick came down. Yeah.
And like that big magnet that picked up Lou Gossett Jr. and just took his ass away.
Yeah.
Who did that? What was that, yo?
Right.
That was crazy. He told us, I got friends in high place. Damn, Skippy, you do.
Yeah, so I guess so. Yeah.
You can say true,
right?
true.
And you know, that's the other thing too. Like, it's so funny. Like, I'll get into these shows, you know, on occasion, and I won't even recognize who the actor is because I'm looking at their character. Like, it took Swain reminded me that, because at first I thought that William Abar,
Richard Roundtree.
I thought it was Shaft, Richard Roundtree, and the Swain was like, no, that's Lou Gossett Jr. I was like, it sure is. It sure is. That I look at him, but man,
mayonnaise.
Gossett played mayonnaise. I got nowhere else to go. But yeah, Lou Gossett played that role. Oh my goodness. Man, the little bit that he has, he plays it so mysteriously, but it's like he's telling you everything, but he's really not. You know, one of those it's very cryptic, but he's doing it just an excellent job with that. You know, and I'm loving the way that it ties back to, you know, him with the note, you know, watch over this boy.
Yeah.
You know, his Watchmen, watch over, you know, whatever. And how it plays back to that was given to him by his dad during the massacre in Tulsa, you know. So, and the way that they also relay that, you know, and talking about the history when they go to the history center, just you have his father was a doughboy in World War I, you know, and he comes back, you know, and as a history person, like, all of that was ringing true. So, you know, when they started talking about, like, World War I and all that, I sat straight up like, y'all better not get shit wrong either. Y'all better not get shit wrong.
You know what? It's funny you say that, because my understanding is that in terms of Black Wall Street, that's who a lot of the people were who established it. A lot of them were soldiers from, you know, who had made money and had come back from World War I. And it was established by that, you know, a lot of those guys. But the thing that I like, and I know you were saying one of the things you mentioned about, you know, the bombing of Black Wall Street and the massacre and then how it's being handled. I said again, I like the fact that it starts with that, and that is a continuous thread throughout all 4 episodes that we've seen thus far. It's never left that. It's never left Tulsa and what's happening in Tulsa and the descendants of Tulsa, and it really addresses in a not so obvious way the trauma that's inflicted upon people, and how it just doesn't stop with, okay, hey, we're sorry, here's some money, okay, now you're all better, right? Well, no. That's not how it works. You know, the fact that, you know, she doesn't know who her ancestors are, and you know, it's all of those things. It's these missing links, you know, and the fact that, again, everything is staying in Tulsa. That wasn't used as a device to say, to set up some superheroes. So it's very different from, let's use, like say in, BVS, Batman versus Superman, let's use a 9/11 analogy to make Batman come out of retirement and want to kick Superman's ass. Okay, all right, I guess, but all of this is very carefully interwoven in a tapestry, and every part of a tapestry is important. Every part of a tapestry contributes to it. Every part of it makes it its whole. And so I like the fact that means something. The fact that Angela's parents, I think she was born and raised in Vietnam, which is now a state post the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
So you see her in that very first episode wearing a traditional Vietnamese garb, and she's serving the kids like a pastry or a dessert, I think it was. And then later on in episode 4, when she's in her Sister Night garb, she has that exchange with Lady True, and Lady True says, this reminds me of something we used to say in Vietnamese, and then says to her in Vietnamese something about her grandfather, and then she speaks back to her in Vietnamese.
Wants to talk to her.
And says, tell my grandfather he's a fucking asshole. Whatever it was she said. I can't remember exactly what she said. But I thought that was hot.
And he was to talk to me in person.
Yeah, it was hot, yo. So, I mean, just the fact that all of these things mean something. And it kind of reminds me, to go back to Adrian's point about it being different from Watchmen, us as comic book fans and as uber nerds, we've all heard the stories of Alan Moore's scripts being super dense, and there being these really long descriptions of things, and things written in the sides, specifically for the artist. Hey, I was thinking this and that and so forth. So his scripts are almost as famous or as infamous as the finished product that we would see in the comics. And there's so much that you can tell that these people put into this, again, to try to make it be as dense a world and to do as much world building as they can without all of the heavy-handedness. It goes back to what Dee was saying years ago about the fact that, while he appreciated, let's see, SiDEBAR ended in 2015. So while he appreciated, the Iron Man movies and the Avengers movies and Captain America and Thor and all the stuff that's subsequent that's come after that, I know he's probably enjoyed Guardians and Captain Marvel to some extent, and all the others, Ant-Man, whatever. But Dee used to say years ago that some things are just better suited in an episodic storytelling format. You can spend more time. You can plant more Easter eggs. You can plant more seeds that will bloom and blossom later on. You can do, this episode can be this kind of episode. That episode can be a slow burn. You just have more time to make this work. And especially something as, like the original Watchmen series, which we always, we agreed early on should have been an HBO series or in some kind of an episodic format. I mean, they are really putting this to the test and delivering, as far as I'm concerned. I couldn't see this as having worked as a movie.
No, not at all, man. And just to emphasize one of the points as far as carrying the history forward from Tulsa and Black Wall Street, the next brilliant step was showing in World War I with the SS officer who's taking the typist who type English very well, a letter which I understand is very authentic in terms of his presentation.
It was.
A letter that was designed to
propaganda.
But to bring the black man over to the German side to fight for them, and really hitting on some very, very, very salient points in terms of how we were treated by our own quote unquote people in this country, and given an opportunity for him then to switch sides and go over and fight for supposedly a place which would care about you more, which is an interesting prospect, and I know for a fact some people actually did expatriate based on that.
Absolutely, did.
So it's interesting, dude. It's an interesting concept, dude. And I like the way they take real world elements and blend them so seamlessly into this fictional universe, and thereby uplifting everything at the same time.
It gives a real sense of foundation and stability to the story, where it feels like Watchmen, where the original comics felt like it's kind of our world, but a different version of it. And that's how this feels. It's kind of now, but a different version of it. It's kind of post World War I and Black Wall Street, but a slightly different version of it. It's kind of post Vietnam. It's kind of post all of these things, but a slightly different version of it. And you know, the tone and the way that they sell it, you just kind of like, all right, I'm going to go for the ride. You know, I'm going to go for the ride. So I want to ask you guys in conclusion, we live in binge culture, you know, thanks to Netflix and some other streaming platforms where, you know, we're used to everything dropping. We consume it all in one massive, you know, long weekend or whatever. And then we have to wait, you know, a year or whatever for it to come back. And I think some shows benefit from that and some shows don't. I think some shows, they tailor make the storytelling for that, and then some of them they don't. Like a show like Mindhunter on Netflix is such a slow burn. I don't think it would have worked well week to week because not enough kind of happens in a way. You don't have these big strokes. You have a lot of little tiny strokes. So I wonder with HBO's Watchmen, do you guys think that it is benefiting from being week to week, or do you think it would have been just as satisfying as a viewer if they had dropped all 9 episodes at one time and you could just watch them all? Because the issues came out. That's why I don't call it a novel. The issues came out separately. You know, once a month or once every other month, or however long it was. I forget how long. If it was a year, if it was longer than that. But what do you guys think?
You know, that's an interesting, you know, analogy that you make there, Swizz, because the actual issues themselves, if you read them individually, they do have a beginning and an ending within themselves, even though there's a larger story, you know what I'm saying? If I recall correctly, it's been a while since I've read, you know, Watchmen, but each issue was its own part, but it still contributed to the whole, you know? And I think with the series, the HBO series, it almost would have benefited if they had put out all 9 at once, because even now, you know, tonight, you know, the 5th episode comes out, but I'm already still thinking, man, I really need to rewatch, you know, everything prior to that, at least once, you know, to kind of sop up anything else that I might have missed or to get the context of, you know, because I think something like as dense as this series is, having all 9 episodes at your disposal, you know, to watch at once, you know, it kind of lends itself to, well, let me rewatch this again before I get to this next episode, before I start this one, you know, and not having the weight on that, you know what I'm saying? So I think it almost, in a way, it is a, and I, you know, I'm hesitant to call it a novel as well, but it has those novelistic qualities where you can read a previous chapter before you proceed to a next one, before you proceed to the next chapter in a novel, just to make sure that, you know, or to clarify something. You
mean like if you put it down for a couple of days and you see, you know what, I'm going to read the last 7 pages of the previous chapter as a run up to the next chapter, because this thing is, you know, I don't want to be like, wait a minute, what, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah, I got you.
Exactly.
I got you.
What about you, D?
No, I mean, I agree, Adrian. I think I had to go back and rewatch 2, 3. Well, I rewatched 3 and 4. I didn't watch 2 again.
Okay.
I didn't watch 1 again, but I watched 3 and 4 again because there's a serious like change in terms of the pacing and the focus between 3 and 4. It kind of goes up. That things change as far as direction goes, and more characters come in and become more interesting, more integral to the overall plot and storyline. Like Dwight goes from being a weirdo in the first episode to being somebody that's like, what's going on with him? There's this arc. Like you did, like I never saw.
That's an understatement.
I you know, seriously, I never saw. Right, exactly. I never saw those two his servants becoming anything other than his servants.
Yeah.
I thought they were just people that had been there waiting on hand because they had a cake waiting there for him. Oh, master, we're glad you're back. I don't know why there's only 3 camels on this cake, but glad you're back, master, from your long ride. How was your trip? How was your? Then the first thing that led me to think that was wrong with these guys was, okay, he pulls out a horseshoe to cut the cake, and he looks at him like, okay, he might not know any better. He's only been around for maybe 3 weeks, 3 days, 3 months. Who knows how long he's been around? So and then Dwight later on, and by the time you get to episode 4, you see he's going on one of his crazy like psychotic breaks where he's the same way he handled a comedian in the first episode of the first issue of the Watchmen is way he handled his own caretakers, his own people. He's went on just killed them all.
Yeah.
And multiple
when he
episodes,
burned that one dude up, Mr. Phillips.
Versions of the same.
Oh, that was
Rushing his
heinous.
ass, yo.
Damn.
Yeah. and then Missing comes down, nuts and all.
Yeah.
To dressed in blue. It's like is that? Yeah, we remember the Ding-a-ling sequence very well from the Watchmen. That was one of those things that it's just
Ding-a-ling.
So it was crazy.
Yeah.
So I mean, to answer your question as far as whether it works better for binge culture, as from watching it all at the same time, being able to watch it all at the same time or watch it individually or watching it now, I think the very nature and essence of the Watchmen works better when you pace it, when you give yourself a chance to digest this, because what makes Watchmen work so well is not only the way that the story is written, but also the fact that you have to go back and see the small little nuances in it that reflect in everything else in the story and build the story that much better and make it much more credible. So yeah, I think the way they're doing it now, we on a weekly basis. As much as I hate it, I love to sit down and watch it. It's just 9 episodes, right? Or 8 episodes per season.
9. Yeah.
I'd rather watch it at 9 hours. I'd rather come home on one day, have a day off, and watch all 9 at the same time. Because that's what I've been trained to do now. But I know that by watching it like that, I know I'm actually missing some of the small subtleties that will do only a better service to the story and the end result of things. So I prefer the way it is. I like it the way it is.
Gotcha. I think for myself, this is kind of a weird, like what Adrian was saying, and both you guys really, that this is kind of a weird hybrid for me, where, there's not, because there's so much content out there, and because we consume it so fast, and I'm not just talking about television, I'm just talking like movies and music, everything. So much stuff comes at me that I rarely go back to anything, especially like a film or a television show. I rarely go back to it. I just don't. Like, I've only seen Endgame one time. I've seen Infinity War one time. Just
same
once.
Here.
And
not me.
and so for me, this is the first thing that came along where I think I told my wife, I was like, I'm thinking about going back and watching the first 3 before I watch 4, just so I could get more of a sense of what's going on in continuity, and also to look for things that I missed, because I'm watching the broad strokes and not really paying attention to some of the detail and some of the hidden things in there. And when I say hidden things, I don't mean like, references to the comic or whatever, like, like nerds fan service stuff. I just mean things that were
Easter eggs, right?
More subliminal to the world building, more subliminal to what the characters. You always miss. Oh, I didn't catch this. She said this or he said that in that exchange. Oh, okay. Stuff, looking for stuff like that. But I will say, my opinion, as a show, as a marketed show that is attempting to accomplish a particular feat in terms of storytelling and to establish an audience and to be something that is a continuation in pop culture, because Watchmen the comic and Dark Knight are the 2 comics of the last 30 years that went into main culture. They went into main culture. They went into mainstream culture. They went into pop culture in general, beyond just what we love them for. So I think as a show, for them to be doing what they're trying to do and they've accomplished it, I think it's actually better for them to sell it and to broadcast it week by week, because it is something that people talk about. In the same way that Game of Thrones is like, you see this episode and then people will talk about how crazy it was or interesting it was, afterwards, or the big moments or the subtle moments or the person who died or, the big change in the world, that became, the thing that people would talk about in the break room on Monday morning. And I think that this is like The Sopranos, it's like Game of Thrones, in that it has the potential to be that. So to give it all at one time, I think people would consume it and then forget about it. And this is actually going week to week as a show, how they're marketing it. It is sustaining its life. It's sustaining its presence in pop culture. It's becoming a juggernaut as opposed to, a Scud missile that just drops all at one time and boom, and that's it. It's building its momentum, and I think it's getting something from this that maybe that some shows wouldn't have, that we've seen in the last couple of years.
That concludes this episode of Sidebar Forever, hosted by Dwight Clark, Swain Hunt, and Adrian Johnson. You can find us online at sidebarforever.com. Any emails or questions can be directed to us at sidebarforever@gmail.com. And also, subscribe to us on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. Sidebar Forever is copyright 2019. Dwight Clark, Swain Hunt, and Adrian Johnson.